Welcome back to the Mom Curious podcast. I'm Daniella Rabbani, and this is the season finale of season 5, dedicated to my amazing sister, Ariana Rabbani Rappaporte. So I wanted to thank you so much for tuning in and for your support, for doing acts of kindness in my sister's honor. As I mentioned, everything I do moving forward is dedicated to Ariana because everything I do is inspired by her. It's been a really hard time, and being able to connect with the guests here, our amazing engineer Gabe and the team at Hoff Studios, most of all you, the audience, has been tremendously healing, and I'm sure that this healing is unfolding. But I just wanted to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And this episode is something that my sister would really appreciate because we are joined by a luminary and a voice of reason and of courage. Her name is Bianna Golodryga, and you may know her as a CNN anchor, someone who breaks down the complicated world we are living in a really compassionate, really clarifying way. And she's brought those gifts to the world of middle grade readers. She just published a book written with her co-author, Yonit Levi, who is an esteemed journalist in Israel. It's called Don't Feed the Lion, and I had the chance to check it out earlier. I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Bianna Golodryga, welcome to Mom Curious. As I told you about 5 seconds earlier, I'm totally obsessed with you.
And as I responded, first of all, you've been amazing. You've been so supportive, Danielle. I just can't thank you enough. And I cannot wait to tell my husband that there is another person in this world, one of two, who are obsessed with me, and you are not my mother. So
Is he obsessed with
there.
you? He should be obsessed with you.
He's the most amazing man in the world. And I couldn't have worked on this book, and we wouldn't have gone this far without the emotional support contributed to this book. But I mean, obsessed is like, if he'll tell you, if you go to my mom's Instagram page, like, you will see what obsession looks like. I also am an only child, so that explains a lot.
I want to talk about your origin story because you've been on a book tour for about, it's been at least a month, right?
Yes, almost. On November 11th, the book came out.
And as you know, and now everyone else knows, I am obsessed with you. I have read the book. I love the book. It's called Don't Feed the Lion. You co-wrote it with Yonit Levi, who is also a wonderful journalist from Israel,
who I'm kind of obsessed with.
I noticed that because you could have written it with anyone. In fact, this was sort of your idea. And I'm wondering, why did you decide to reach out to her and make this collaborative experience?
Well, this book would not be what it is without Yonit. I can't imagine having worked on it with anyone else. And it was really a no-brainer. The seed was planted for this book before October 7th, but she was such a crutch for me after the October 7th attacks. And we, we've known each other for so many years, but we started corresponding daily, like multiple times a day. Text, we're both journalists. We are very similar personalities. I don't even think the idea for a book would have crossed my mind if it wasn't for my relationship with Yonit. And I don't think that we would be able to tell it the way we did and have sort of a global appeal for it without her voice. And, she, I don't know, you probably saw, she's kind of perfect, and she has amazing English, and she went to school here in the US. So she studied, her dad was working here. So she spent her formative elementary school years here in the US. So she understands what schools are like, what it's like to be different. He is the other half of this book.
I think it's also really important to note that she is Israeli and that you touch on Israel and its significance in the Jewish identity and experience. And that was a huge choice you made in the book, which I, as the daughter of Israelis, really appreciated being reflected. You are an immigrant. I didn't realize you're also an only child. Can we get some origin stories?
I was born in the former Soviet Union in Moldova, which is now an independent country, and we came to the US in 1980 as political refugees. So I was 18 months old. This is all my parents who were really like the heroes in my life story because, as my dad constantly reminds us, and my husband makes fun of it too, but it is all true that without him, like we wouldn't have been here. And I was just their most expensive piece of luggage that they brought with them. So I'm forever grateful that they wanted to come to the US. We came as Jewish refugees, and they wanted to give me a life as an American Jew. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So, yes, we moved to, of all places, Galveston, Texas, as one does, left on the Jackson-Vanik Act. So we were able to leave. And I guess in theory, we were supposed to go to Israel, but my parents had always wanted to go to the United States. And so my dad was walking around and asking everybody where they were going. And so some people were going to Israel, people were going to Australia, Canada, but the majority were going to the US. And where in the US? Brighton Beach. Mm-hmm. So he was like, everyone's going to New York, Brighton Beach, and, a few LA, a few Chicago. And so my dad, turned to my mom and said, we're not going to go where they're all going. Like, if they're going to move to the US, we want to assimilate. We want to live American lives. Wow. And that was the second best decision they made after they decided to go to America. And so HIAS, which is the Hebrew Immigrant Resettlement Agency, that was helping us move and relocate to the US, asked, okay, well, where do you want to go? My dad was an engineer by training. My mom wanted to go somewhere warm. So they're like, well, there's a Jewish community in Galveston, Texas that would love to sponsor you. And so my parents, they knew what Houston was, which is about an hour's drive away from Galveston, but they'd never, heard of Galveston. And we were there like fish out of water for 6 months. And then my dad got a job in Houston, and my parents are still there. So I grew up in Houston, and my parents are still there and love it. And, my kids love Houston. So yes, it's a big blessing to grow up in Texas.
I mean, the New York Jewish community is huge, and it's strong, and it's, a very special place. But there is a Southern Jewish community that we barely talk about. I've never been to Texas in my life.
Oh, wow. You should go. It's a great place.
That's how I'm really a New York Jew. I've been all over Europe, never once to Texas.
It's like a completely different country, but you're still in the same country, if that makes sense. And all of the major cities in metropolitan areas have rather large, vibrant Jewish communities. I remember, it's so funny you mentioned Edward Albee. I went to a performing arts high school in Houston.
What?
And
were you an actress?
I was a theater major.
Oh,
yes, I don't know if I was an actress. I wouldn't go that far, but I was a theater major in high school. And we went to see some production. It's funny how some things just stay in your mind and really have an impact on you. We went to see some play. I don't remember what it was. It was clearly an Edward Albee play, but I don't remember which one it was.
The Last Night of Ballyhoo.
No.
Oh, well then never mind.
No, it wasn't that. I have to go back, and now there are two things I need to go make sure I got the name of the book right and the play right. But I remember Edward spoke after the play, and it was at the University of Houston, and I remember that really stood out to me. Wow, real playwright! This guy is famous and a big deal. But yeah, so I grew up in outside of Houston, where there were no Jewish families, none. I was the only Jew in my school. And then on top of that, we were Russian, Soviet, bad guys at the time in the 1980s. Sadly, that's sort of the case now. But, there had been a period where it looked like Russia really would change course and go down a different path. And sadly, that didn't happen. But so, yes, I always sort of grew up as the other. And I guess we all do in a certain way, in routines, we all, want to fit in. So, you don't like our name, you don't like our hair, whatever it is. And for me, it was I had this long last name, and I didn't look like everyone else. And my parents had accents, and I didn't have the typical snacks that all other kids have at their homes, But it was a great childhood and upbringing. But it was only when my parents moved into Houston proper, as they got more settled in thetheir jobs and their career, and they always sent me to Hebrew school, which is another thing that I'm so grateful for. And, you don't appreciate at the time, but, it was a good 45-minute drive every week. We'd go to Shabbat services. And it was very important for them that I have a Jewish education and that I be surrounded by other Jewish kids, maybe not on a daily basis, but at least have the religious school experience. And it was important that I was bat mitzvahed for them. And I think one of the best compliments, and I didn't even mean it as a compliment, that my dad says I ever gave him was that I said I never felt poor growing up. And we really were at times. When we came to the US with $75 or $70 a person, my dad's first job, my mom was mopping floors. My dad was, in Galveston. I don't remember what work he was doing there, but not engineering. He eventually got an engineering job in Houston. And then, my mom, another success story, became an executive at many oil companies that she worked at. So that is the true American dream story, yes. And that could only happen in this country in such a short period of time. But no, we now when I talk to them as an adult, we didn't, they went through years of just going to the grocery store with the calculator, making sure that we could afford everything, and always giving me the best life I could have, which they were successful at, clearly, because I never felt that we didn't have money. So I had a great upbringing, and as I got older, especially, going to Hebrew school, going to synagogue, being in a Jewish sorority for my freshman. I went to the University of Texas in Austin. Austin's another great town.
I do hear that Austin
you should
is
go.
A great town. Yeah.
Yes, it's fantastic. So, and I had a lot of Jewish friends, in my adolescence and college years as well. And then moving to New York, I had a good friend base, because a lot of, Texans, what they would do is, and I don't know how it relates or applies to other states, but a lot of my Texan friends would either move to New York or LA after school.
Yes.
And get their first, job or two there, and then come back to Texas. And I was one of those that just didn't come back. I came to New York and I stayed.
Well, you came to New York and turned out to be a superstar.
No,
I know I'm obsessed with you, but yes, I would go that far. I would go that far. Okay. I also am a first generation American, and I have such gratitude for my parents. I mean, the fact that I get to be an actress and make art for a living is a testament to them. They came here with literally nothing, less than nothing. And look at us now. I wonder how that experience shaped you and propels you forward in being a real advocate against anti-Semitism now, because putting out a book like this while you're also an anchor on CNN and a mother of, is it two?
Two, yeah.
That's a lot. It's a lot on your plate, and there must be some fire in your belly to make that happen.
Yeah, look, I think I wouldn't describe myself as a naive person, and I always knew that anti-Semitism was sadly here to stay in our lives, in the US, around the world. But I thought, like so many other people, it was sort of manageable, right? Mm-hmm. Like the genie was back in the bottle, and then every once in a while, a little bit of anti-Semitism would come out, but you just put the lid on a little bit tighter, and that's fine. And I feel, looking back, where I made the mistake, even as a journalist and as an American Jew and a mother, was thinking it was sort of a one-off. Like, these are all individual cases. So some crazy person on the West Coast and somebody here, and we have a lot of guns in this country, so that only exacerbates emotions. And I never thought of it as, okay, this is a problem that is just a ticking time bomb, and it could boil over at any point. And I definitely didn't think it would be an attack on Jews,
right,
that would spark that, right. And so, I think, I remember covering the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh, and that was really personal for me, not only, as a Jewish American, but it was also that the perpetrator, the shooter, was like a right-wing nut who was very much against U.S. immigration law at that point. And HIAS, which was the organization that helped move me to the U.S., right, was affiliated with the Tree of Life synagogue. So it just goes to show, you have pervasive anti-Semitism in all specters and right, left, different fields. And that's what anti-Semitism does, right? It morphs and changes form.
Yeah.
But the end result is always the same, and it's Jews being blamed and attacked. And yet, for me, this was always a story of the past. Like, it came here as a political refugee, and I'm in America, and yes, there may be some bad experiences, but for the most part, those days are behind us. And I never would have imagined writing not only like a middle grade novel, but about this very issue, or having these conversations with my kids in New York City, the largest, most vibrant Jewish community, outside of Israel in the world.
Yeah. You tell a story about how 2 years ago, your then 10-year-old son, I guess it was 3 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
your then 10-year-old son really grappled with going to a basketball game in Brooklyn because one of the biggest sports stars in the world was spewing anti-Semitic tweets. And I live in Brooklyn, so I know that drive across the bridge very well. I also know that conversation pretty well. Um, can you tell us how that inspired the writing of this book, um, and how you grappled with really talking to him about how people sometimes do hate us,
Yeah.
and what
And
an
answering the question of why. I mean, that is the
oh,
toughest
why? That
question.
was the question, right?
Yeah. Why
Right.
do they hate us?
Why do
And
they hate us?
can we not go like this? Do they not want me at this basketball game? Should I not be cheering for them? Can I not wear, the
That's what
jersey?
he
And
asked
so,
you, really?
yeah, I mean,
Like he wasn't welcome?
we were already in the Uber, and this was after, I mean, I think it was Kanye West who initially had his episode and meltdown
His
against
first, his
Jews.
first. There
Yeah.
have been several.
There's I've lost track. Whichever DEF CON 1 to 4 or 5, or wherever it was, whichever level.
If we don't
But
laugh, it's like
that's Jewish humor, right? So that had happened, and then my son to this day is a huge sports fan,
by the
and
way, I'm so impressed with how much you know about sports.
it's all
That
because of him. I mean, I grew
Whoa.
up. No, I will say honestly, I grew up a huge basketball fan.
I saw
Um,
in your
yeah.
writing. I'm like, what? How do you know so much about sports?
Well, the book delves into soccer, really, which is sort of a universal sport, right? And why we wanted to address it in that form, and also that it's easy to identify for kids and sports fans around the world. And also, my son, he I think gets a little nervous, or not nervous, but embarrassed when I talk about him. But I'm like, listen, you're sort of the inspiration
You're
for this
my
book.
muse.
I don't think, no offense to you, I don't think that Mom's Curious is going to be a podcast he's going to listen to now, but who knows? Who
Hey, you
knows?
never know.
I know, you
I
never
look like
know.
a very cool robber right now.
I'm sure
I'm sure he's
he's
that
like,
stealth
this is,
ninja
yes,
look I
like,
got
who is
going
this
on.
woman? My
I
mom,
know,
must
my
be cool.
God, that beanie.
Yes. No, he was a basketball. I mean, soccer is his sport, football is his sport. But anyway, he likes all sports. And so, yeah, we were on our way to a Brooklyn Nets game, and he asked, this was after Kyrie Irving started posting all of his stuff. And I think I don't know for him what upset him more. I know what upset me more was not the post itself, but the reaction to it, and how everyone was sort of apologizing for him, but him, and that made the problem even bigger.
Yeah.
And at some point, then, the team owner was weighing in, and other players were weighing in, and people were coming to his defense. And then once he was suspended, it turned into oh no, like, there goes their record, and what are they getting? And then the guilt falls back on the Jews.
Yes.
Like, it's just sort of, okay, you did this, and by the way, by speaking out against it, like, that's only going to exacerbate anti-Semitism.
Well, that's the craziest part about actually, like, defending yourself in any way. It's like, there's this trope that, like, Jews control whatever, media, Hollywood,
everything,
whatever,
yeah.
that they control the weather. It's crazy. But if we speak up against injustice, or we act against injustice, we're only proving that point by there being repercussions. I mean, it's the craziest, actually most genius form of hatred. It's like,
Right.
Oh, if you use any of the agency or power that any human being ought to have, that is repulsive and wrong. Anyway, I digress.
And a normal reaction.
A normal reaction.
If this had been any other minority that had been attacked, we would expect, and by the way, I would like to think that allies and everyone who's not even part or a member of that minority would also speak out.
Right.
Um,
Which you touch on in the book, and I love the
oh,
character of Gabe so much.
yeah, Gabe's wonderful.
Oh,
Every day we go through like who's our favorite character of the day.
oh, it's
Um,
always Gabe for me.
Oh, I love that. I love that you love Gabe. Yeah, so Gabe is our ally, in the book, who's 13 years old and a new kid in school. And we didn't want to make him just sort of a token ally, like here's somebody who's going to come in and defend, the Jewish kids who feel like they're being attacked. But each character carries their own burden and their own issues and struggles. And Gabe puts it into perspective with, I mean, he's like our most mature of the
Yeah.
three
Well, he had to grow
teenagers.
up quick.
And yes, he's had experienced the loss of a parent recently, and being away from his dad as well, who's serving in the military. And he's had to grow up quickly, and so with that comes a lot more of responsibility for him to feel like he has to take care of everyone and keep it all together. So yes, the empathy really, I think, in the book generates from him and Ezra, like
Yeah.
our beloved grandfather.
And they connect,
Um,
which I think is so sweet.
yeah, it is. It is. Thank you so much. I love that you, like, there's some interviews where we're like, did they read the book? I mean, I find myself, I
Yeah.
also am guilty at times if I have so many authors that I'm interviewing. So no disrespect to people who didn't have a chance to read the book. I know how busy we all are, but you can tell when people do. And so I have a newfound appreciation, as does Yonit, for
Yeah.
those that do.
Yeah,
And as
I do.
journalists too.
I do read the books that when I sit down with authors, sometimes I feel like I'm doing a book report, which can be, which is a little stressful. But I feel like I had such a peek into your heart, and
Mm,
also I think a lot of the conversations that I hear you having are really great, and people are so excited that you're speaking out against anti-Semitism, and probably want to pick your brain because you know so much. First of all, about the Soviet anti-Semitism, which has a huge impact on what we're living through today, and they want to pick your brain about the news. But I am the host of the Mom Curious podcast, and I hope that moms and kids alike read this book because it's good. And the thing is, you're not shoving lessons down the throat of children. You're like, it's actually a great sports book. It's a book about empathy for kids who are not Jewish and just want to like know what it's like to stand up for or understand someone else's culture and heritage and their own struggles. Um, yeah, I really love the book. I really did.
oh,
I'm not
thank
obsessed with
you.
you out of nowhere, Bianna. What do you think is
Well,
going on here? I have no taste.
no,
I
well,
got
you
good
have
taste.
you have good taste in books. I'll give you that. I
It's
can't.
a great book.
I'm so flattered that you not only read the book, but also you get the points we were trying to make by writing this story. And again, we didn't want to make it didactic or feel like a homework assignment for kids. Like, oh, let's read a book on how not to hate Jewish people. And I noticed from, again, like I'm by no means an anti-Semitism expert, nor is neither is Yonit, but we have kids that are roughly the same age, and it's a bit different for our children in that her kids are being raised given all of the complexities and issues that Israelis struggle with that we will never understand on a daily basis. They are the majority in Israel as
Right,
Jews,
right.
so anti-Semitism is not something they face as often as we do. And yet Yonit's son was even asked, he asked her as we were in the early phases of writing this book, like, why do they hate us? Why do people I don't know hate us? And I think for, my kids, it was really, especially my son, it was October 7th. But as I said, even before that, when there would be athletes and people he just felt excluded by. And when we would expect, as if, as any other incident that would be similar, that there would be consequences for people's actions. It didn't seem like there were really many. I mean,
Yeah.
again, everyone apologized for him but him. I think they felt like they had no other option but to suspend him. But it again, this was all post George Floyd, and I felt as an American, as a mother at that time, this murder was such a shock to all of our systems and really an opportunity to teach children about empathy, about hate, about racism, about intolerance. And there were so many resources dedicated to that at schools, which was just so
Amazing.
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 And I think, we were constantly being updated by schools and as journalists about what we're doing and what's changing and what kids are learning now. And so I just assumed that the same applied to anti-Semitism. So after this incident happened, my husband and I didn't know how to respond to our son. I was like, okay, well, let me just reach out to the school. And I think all the schools are sort of in the same boat in that, when I asked, what resources do you have on this issue? It was, we don't really have any at this age. We just wait until they ask questions in class and maybe we'll address them then. I was thinking that is a terrible position to put a kid in, and how realistic is it that they would raise this, on their own unilaterally? Like, let's talk about
To a
anti-Semitism.
teacher, like
Yeah,
in what world is your kid raising their hand and being like, hey, Mrs. Conan, I really wanted to talk about what Kyrie Irving said today about the Jews. Like, it's never
yeah.
going to happen.
Yes, and kids, as we try to relay in the book as well, really are, first of all, they're so smart and they have great gut instincts and when they know right from wrong. But what they also know is that once that affirmation of their gut instinct comes from the adults in their lives. So, a tragedy happens and they wait for their coaches, their teachers, the heads of the school to talk to them about that. And when it's avoided or sort of swept under the rug, or, oh, just a swastika here or there, let's get rid of it, paint over it, and nothing to see here, and maybe have sort of a one kumbaya session and talk to kids about how, swastikas are bad, and that's it, and you move on. You never really address the root problem.
Right.
And so for me and for Yonit, and I think for so many of us, it was the takeaway was it's not as if people are condoning anti-Semitism. I mean, not serious people or people we're writing this book for, but it just was never elevated to the level of urgency as other forms of hate were. And I to this day don't understand why. And when we found out that we did some research and there were literally no books on this issue for this age group, which is so impressionable, so smart. They still talk to their parents.
Right.
They're the one generation removed from some of the students in the incidents that we saw on college campuses.
That's right.
So we just said, let's write the book we can't find.
Yeah, you totally did it. You wrote the book, and my real hope in sitting down with you today is that the listener will not only buy the book or for themselves and for their children. I mean, I thought it was a great read for me, just for the record. My kids are 8 and 6, and so I do think that it's a little young. My son is a really gifted little boy, and he's sensitive, so I try to drip feed him. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and my father is a Yom Kippur War veteran, and so I try to just drip feed him my family story. I don't think he's ready for it, but he did look at the blurb in the back, and he was sure that it must have been talking about the Holocaust, because at some point in the story, and I can reveal this because it is on the blurb in the back, a swastika is written on the main character Theo's locker. And my 8-year-old was so rattled by it when I told him that it actually takes place in the year 2021. And, I want so badly for the listener to pick up the book for themselves, for their family, for their friends over the holiday. Also because it's a good read. Like, it's not just a bummer, but for the record. But it is reflective of the world we live in. It's reflective of the world we have been living in for at least the past 5 years here in the United States, where, like you said, swastikas here, swastikas there, need to be addressed. Because if they're
Yeah.
not addressed, then we have a bigger problem on our hands.
And you came to I was so grateful,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh no, you don't need to come. Don't worry about finding a sitter because your kids are so young. But you came to our event at the Stryker Center
I
in New
did.
York, which I'm so grateful for. But you'll recall, I mean, we were trying to figure out who is the audience. This is, would be best suited for this, and who should we come speak to the audience. And there were students in the audience, and you'll
Young.
recall there was one 8th grade student
Yep.
who said that he had a swastika and Heil Hitler, I believe, engraved like on his school desk. And if you could hear a pin drop in the room at the time. And I think he said, it really bothered me. And
He actually
that's
said,
an
I
understatement.
don't like it.
I don't like it.
So
Yes.
he raised his hand at the at the end of essentially the end of the presentation, the event. There was a comedian. There was this really interesting scholar from the former Soviet Union. Yonit. It was like it was just wonderful. And there were mostly families there and a few, kids. I couldn't believe he raised his hand. And he opened up to you after an hour of essentially saying, we need to open up this conversation. The child told you, Bianna, I don't like it. And you handled that so well, because literally there were, I don't know how many hundreds of people who were gutted to know that what your fiction book is actually real life. Like, these are people who care enough to have come to the event. These are people who've already bought in to understand, yes, of course, there is a anti-Semitism problem. But to hear this child, he wasn't even in college. We've sort of gotten used to college kids talking about the anti-Semitism that they experience. He was a little boy. We were all floored by it. But I know that the mother...
It was a gut punch. Yeah. And it again, we were toying with the idea, maybe let's open it up for questions specifically from kids in the audience. And then we thought maybe, there'd be one or two, if any. And so some, there were kids that asked with the comedian, where'd you learn how to do the Trump impersonation? And then when this boy raised his hand, I have to say, I was not expecting that to come out of his mouth. And his mother reached out to me the next day and said, that was my son. And I just want you to know that, we're dealing with this. We've known about this for a while. The school is actually finally responding. But you should know that this was the first time he spoke out about this in a public setting where he felt comfortable enough to talk about it. And that's where sort of the light bulb went off, where Yonit and I said, we need to be having these discussions at schools with kids. We went to a school in New York the next day. And again, I didn't know, we have to come in sort of very sensitively and not knowing how much these kids anywhere between the ages of 9 and 14 are exposed to some of these very difficult and uncomfortable storylines and incidents. But when we asked this room of kids that are both, Jewish and non-Jewish, raise your hand if you know what a swastika is. Every hand went up.
Really?
Raise your hand if you know what anti-Semitism is. Or if you've heard of anti-Semitism. Every hand went up. I mean, so these kids, however we tried to shelter them or protect them and, avoid these conversations, they're aware. And so that is reinforcement that these conversations are so necessary. And the questions that these kids asked, I mean, at some point, the school officials had to say, okay, last question. We couldn't get to all of the questions in the room. And it was everything from, again, why do people not like Jews? Non-Jewish students, saying, what can I do to help my Jewish friends? Really, really productive. And I think for Yonit and me, sort of a cathartic, rewarding feeling that this is who the book is for. And there's a need for these type of conversations that I'm surprised we're not having more of in schools.
So I mentioned that I was hoping that people would buy this book as like a holiday gift, but really what would be even better, and I know that I'm speaking directly to the audience because I know that our listeners are leaders in their homes, certainly, but also in their communities. If we can get Don't Feed the Lion in our schools' libraries and in our, community libraries, we would all benefit.
I agree.
People should know, the fact that we're adults and we have to explain to other adults what anti-Semitism is, and then have some sort of weird back and forth about, about like the lived experience of, being Jewish and having had, been Jewish for centuries, like if we could have these conversations in these safe environments in our school settings, particularly if they're not Jewish schools. Like if you go to, I don't know if it was Horace Mann or Fieldston or wherever with these prep schools in New York, and you're having these conversations where smart kids who are like Jewish and non-Jewish are grappling with this phenomenon together in a safe environment with trusted adults, we could really do something great for our society, certainly for the Jewish community, yes, but also where hate festers, it grows.
Hmm.
And it's not going to be siloed. It never is siloed just to one community. So, yeah, I hope that more communities get to have these conversations. That same mother listens to this show and messaged me and said
Wow.
that in fact, um, to let you know that Bianna has already changed the world in her world because they got him a new desk.
Wow.
That desk that had a swastika and Heil Hitler on it is no more. And she wanted to thank you.
Well, and can you imagine that is like the minimum that
That's all
you
he
would
had to do.
expect? You think he was the first person that saw that on his desk? I mean, that the fact that they probably had to go back and forth multiple rounds with the school, or even just seeing that for the first time, it's horrifying. In
I literally have the chills.
2025.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's an accomplishment that he got a new desk, but the problem is still there and it can't be swept under the rug. And I think we overcomplicate this conversation where I know, that for so many reasons, the Israel-Palestinian conflict is, garners so much emotion. It's so divisive. But as we know, anti-Semitism long predates this conflict. And
It long
we
predates the modern state of Israel.
exactly. And so when we were writing this book and even doing our research before, we found there's plenty of books for kindergartners on Hanukkah, and there are a lot of books for high schoolers and older on the Holocaust. And yet, for this age group, on the issue of anti Semitism, there was nothing. And, our conclusion was this is just a topic that educators feel directly leads to the conflict in the Middle East.
Wow.
And our response is let's write a book that has nothing to do with the conflict in the Middle East. It doesn't touch on October 7th. It's purposefully dated in 2022. And let's make this an American story. Yes, we have Israeli grandparents who immigrated to this country, who are some of our favorite characters in this book,
Yeah.
and an Israeli co-author. But everything else is, all USA. And it's a reminder that as amazing as this country is, and there's no other country I'd rather and I'd want to be living in and raising my kids in as a Jewish woman. We've always had anti-Semitism here as well that we've had to deal with. I don't remember there being a time when I didn't go to a synagogue or a Jewish institution when there weren't armed guards outside, and we've
Right.
normalized that. I mean, now I probably won't go into one where I don't see extra security because it's
Scary?
off-putting. Yes,
Yeah. And
and
for good
no
reason.
other.
I just want to say that, like, sometimes we lovingly call ourselves neurotic and, tease the Jewish soul on, like, how scared we can be. But the truth is, it is scary. There are bomb threats all the time. You mention it in the book that, that there are bomb threats all the time happening on Jewish synagogues.
Right.
Um,
And all you need is whatever incident to incite it, right? So this person's protesting from the far right, this person's protesting on this,
right,
inevitably it never ends well for the Jews.
right.
And we've sort of come to accept that. And that's also another issue we should address and speak about because
It's unacceptable.
All of this, it's unacceptable. No other community would put up with this. And it's not something that you can just either avoid talking about or, again, erase, swastikas for, or get extra reinforcement on your windows or extra security. We see the statistics. We see that the FBI, year after year, again, predates October 7th even, have said that by far anti-Semitism is the highest form of religious-based hate.
Right.
I think it's like at 70% now. But at some point, we just come to view numbers of statistics, and they're just that. But when you have these conversations with people about real life examples, about incidents that have happened in their lives, people that they know, I mean, the swastikas in the book, again, it's a fictional book, but they're all based on true events that have happened to members of my family at schools where I know, the students attended. And again, I hate to keep saying this, but all pre-October 7th. So when people say, oh, but it's, it's once this war ends, or it's all because of this, or largely because of this, I beg to differ.
Oh, no, I have been speaking out against anti-Semitism since 2020, May 2021, when I saw it all over my my social media feed. And it's only grown from there. I appreciate that what you're doing, speaking out against it now, but I know that you also saw it coming. I mean, the writing was quite literally on the wall, and it has. I think sometimes we can blame it on the war, which has been really awful. Just awful all around.
Heartbreaking. And the longest war, in Israel's history. And you see the images, you see the suffering, you see the humanitarian, tragedy out of it all. And it's devastating. And
two things can exist at the same time.
Of course.
Yeah. So I hope that when people read this, that they feel emboldened as that child did to say, I don't like this. The kids in the story really know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
They do. And so do our kids in many ways. I was surprised to hear that you had a hard time getting this published. You are, as I mentioned, and I'm sure your mother would agree, a superstar. And as is Yonit, by the way.
Yes.
So like two superstars.
She's like the most prominent household name in Israel.
She's a very big deal.
Yes.
I couldn't get her on the Mom Curious podcast. I tried my darndest.
Well, you didn't have the right connection.
I know.
Next time, call me.
All right.
No, we were, again, another point where we were a bit naive, in that we both, Yonit went back and looked at our text exchanges, and it was like October 20th when I wrote to her and said we should write a book on anti-Semitism, because you could just tell that this is where we were going. And I don't even know if the war had officially started. I don't know if the IDF had even gone in at that point, but it was clear, just given everything that we'd seen and how quickly we'd seen such escalation in terms of, anti-Semitic attacks and remarks and, concerns. And so I just said, listen, like, we've got to do something. Let's do this. Then from there, it was maybe the end of December 23, where we already had the idea, the premise for our book, the first few chapters. Like, we had a proposal, we had things ready to go. And as you said, we're both prominent figures. We have access to, great book agents, and they knew who to reach out to. And not one publisher would pick up the book. I mean, this is a very difficult age group to write for, which we've also come to find is true. And that's a whole other, it's just this genre, this age group, I guess, middle grade readers, just doesn't sell well. And again, these are the most curious, like, impressionable, smart, so that's another void we need to fill ASAP.
We need to get you talking to an 8th grader. We need you to get to talk to that kid. I'm putting on my marketing mind now. I just think because it's such a good book. That's the thing. It's like we keep dancing around like the topic of the book because we as adults want to talk about anti-Semitism because it's so perplexing and hurtful, to our society and to our personhood. But
Yeah.
I think like the book itself is a good book. We need to get you talking to like that room full of kids who like really had something to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, I digress. Back to you. Why was it hard to publish?
No, so I mean, we have our theories, but it was just, the very difficult age group to write for. We'd hear nothing from some of them. Pass, pass, pass. Appreciate the endeavor. Now it's not the time, perhaps, to talk about this. Maybe next year, come back to us, or no response at all. To the point where we're so, and this goes back to, my respect and complete adoration for my husband, who was really like pushing us and supporting us and saying, no, this is what you need. This is like, without saying this is your calling, like this is what you need to do. And whatever needs to be, like, you'll self-publish, you just keep writing, like, don't let this be an obstacle. And so we said, fine, worst case scenario, we'll self-publish this book. And we happened to be at a dinner party in February of 25. So this year, I mean, how quickly things happen. And I was seated next to Michael Linton, who was a former head of Sony, and he's the chairman of Snap. And we've known him for a few years. And I was telling him about this book and this project. And he knew Yonit. He had, funny enough, had dinner with her a few weeks before. I'm like, Yonit, why didn't you push him for this? Like, why was it on me? So I was telling him, like, we can't find a publisher. And not woe was us, but, it was just my go-to, conversation at that point about the book, because we knew we just have to self-publish. And he said, listen, I'll read it. And if I like it, I'll publish it. And it turned out that he has a small publishing company with his sister that he runs. It's a regional children's book company, so nothing, on this genre or scale. But he's like, we can print books, as many books as you need. So send me the book, and if I like it, we'll go from there. And by July, we were done. Like, we had a deal. We were done with the book, and said, okay, November, we need to publish this as soon as possible. And the publisher's like, wow, Arcadia, the people there were amazing, but they're like, November is really short turnaround. And in our minds as journalists, we're like, that's 4 or 5 months from now. That's like an eternity. But one of the blessings of going with a smaller publisher was that we could have more leeway and flexibility with the timing of the release. Because most books, as you probably know as well, with a major publishing house, it could be a year and a half. Right. I mean, it's up to them when they want to release it.
No, this
and
is
for us, yeah,
urgent. In Hebrew, they call it dachuf. It's urgent,
Yeah, I mean, not as if anti-Semitism. I mean, we wish. Could you imagine? Like, it's all gone. So no one knows.
She published a book, and then like that, poof.
Yes, eradicated.
Centuries of hatred just gone. Can you believe it?
But that was another reason why we didn't want the focus to be just on the anti-Semitism that was sparked maybe post October 7th, because, this is a book that we hope will live in perpetuity.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Phil would like to make it a movie.
He was so nice.
I would like to throw my beanie in the ring to play some sort of character, because I like.
Who do you want to play? I mean, you're too old
to play the mom.
Emma? Yeah. Would you like to be an economist? I think you'd be a wonderful Emma.
Let's do it. I think it's a great. I do think it would be a great film. I really do.
Oh,
and is there another in the works? Sequel? Those do well. I have a big reader at home, and if we can get like many of the same.
Or a prequel, because the book originally was sort of Ezra and Talia, and the title was "I Think I Love You, Talia Kaplan," and which was like his one-hit wonder song. He's a musician, and
these are the grandparents, by the way.
Yes, and we were like, okay, there's no 13-year-old that will likely pick up a book that's called "I Think I Love You, Talia Kaplan."
Well, no 13-year-old boy, maybe a girl.
Yes, maybe a girl. And we wanted both boys and girls, so yeah. It's we'll see. It was such an amazing experience working together that if for no other reason, like, we have to find another project to do together. That's sort of the takeaway for Yonit and me.
I love that so much. Speaking of takeaways, what do you want the moms, the kids, the Jews, the non-Jews to take away from reading Don't Feed the Lion?
To speak out about what, yes, is an uncomfortable conversation, but is one that is desperately needed. And to hopefully feel that they are empowered after reading a book like this, whether they're a parent, whether they're kids, whether they're Jewish or not, to finally address an issue that we have been, I think, underestimating as educators and as parents, and hoping, maybe for our kids' generation, it won't manifest the way it did for our ancestors and previous generations. No, like if you don't talk about something, it will inevitably rear its ugly head, and it will happen when you least expect it. So having all of these conversations, I'm so grateful as like progressive members of society, like in a country where we can talk about other issues and deal with them head on, even uncomfortable conversations.
And make
The same should
changes.
apply. Yes.
We have
And
made changes.
quickly.
Yes, I
Yes.
think we really have.
The same should apply for anti-Semitism.
Amen. Well, where can we pick up
Linktree. I was gonna say Lion Tree.
Okay, on your Linktree?
Linktree.com. Yes.
Okay.
My Linktree, and your local bookstores, Barnes and Noble. So yes, and also, we like being engaged with our followers and readers as well. So if you have any issues, we kind of have like an imposter selling the book as well. I had a few people, need to as well reach out to us and say that there was a fake Don't Feed the Lion that was being sold on Amazon, and
because you were sold out for a while.
We were sold out twice, but it was sold on Amazon and it had blank pages inside when the book arrived.
Oh my God.
And so we've dealt with that. Apparently this is not an anomaly. Like it's happens quite frequently now, unfortunately. People try to earn a buck. But yes, let us know if you have difficulty finding the book, because we're trying to, we're the sort of the little engine that could, as is Arcadia. Like we're trying to print as many as we can. We'd love to get them into as many schools as we can, in libraries. So every mom that's listening, I hope you can talk about this book with your family and your community.
I can attest to the fact that you are quite responsive, both to
Yes,
right. That's how we met, and also this wonderful mother who reached out to you was so moved by your conversation that you really want to engage with your readers and your audience. So you can find Bianna at Bianna Golodryga on Instagram. Of course, you should be watching her on CNN all the time. Did I mention I'm obsessed? Because I am. I should, Gabe, we should cut out a couple of times when I say that. It's
no, I love it. I love it. I have to, again, it's all about my husband seeing it, and we have no familial relationship. Like you and I were strangers. We met, and this is all an organic sort of bond.
I really am very grateful for your reporting and for your book. I think it's a great read. I really do. And I'm excited for young readers to get their hands on it, for them to be the Gabes of the world, and for them to be, the proud Jews that we hope our children to be, because they have a lot to be proud of. And I joke that I'm obsessed with you, but is it a joke?
I'm obsessed that you're obsessed, and I just think if more people were like you and speaking out and using your talent and being as gracious and genuine as you clearly are, I think for the most part, social media has been sort of a black hole, and I also think a trigger for a lot of the hate and nastiness in the world. But once in a blue moon, you'll find like a diamond, and you're one of those. So I'm glad that we've connected, and I hope we can stay friends.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again, and everybody, please go get Don't Feed the Lion on Amazon. You could get it at Barnes and Noble. Go to Bianna's Linktree. Keep in touch. This is our season finale of the Mom Curious podcast. We really ended it with a bang. And I wanted to say happy holidays and thank you so much for being so supportive. We'll see you in the new year.